I'm Sheila Coleman. I'm a principal engineer with Lookout, one of the sponsors, and I've prepared an MP4 to present about my talk, but so many other people are courageously going live. I wanted to chat for a moment and introduce myself and say big thank you to the organizers. I can really appreciate how much work this has been, and I think it's going amazingly well. I'm so impressed with all the other speakers who've managed to get into the stage and get their slides up. I'm hoping it goes that well for me. Maybe the tool is perfect and it's just going to be simple. So with that brief introduction, I'm really happy you're all here. Thank you for your attention in advance. I will hopefully not run out of time once I hit play and be able to keep an eye on the chat and also maybe have a minute or two after it plays. Here we go. Engineer with Lookout. This is my second day of security, maybe my third. I've been with Lookout for more than 5 years, between 5 and 6 years, and I'm very excited to be presenting to all of you. I want to pre-disclose, though, I can't really know how many of you there are. I'm going to try to talk as if you're live and as if there's 600 of you, and I can make eye contact with most of you by looking around the room, but it could be 6,000 of you or 6 of you, I don't know. I'm really glad you're out there, whoever is out there. The name of my presentation is going to be Continuous Care, Security Attention in Software Development, but you do not need to be a software developer to get some value from the presentation. It's really about trying to develop software in a culture where you're paying attention to security topics continuously rather than just all in one moment at the end of your work stream. So please stay, even if you're not a software developer. And what else? Some housekeeping. I'm in my home. You can probably tell that. There are cars going by and people playing piano around me. I hope you're charmed. There's nothing I can do about it. We're all doing what we can. And I thank you for your patience with that stuff. I'd also like to start with a story that comes from just reflecting back on all of my jobs. I've been doing this for a very long time. You can probably tell by my white hair. But I was looking at Wikipedia to prepare my bio for this speech and came up with, totally by accident, didn't know this was out here, a cautionary tale about the need to pay attention to security throughout. So in a prior job, there was a startup, so very demanding of my time and heart, all-nighters, three-week trips, multiple of them abroad, like a very demanding and rewarding job that I wanted to mention in my speaker bio because I thought it was interesting. And Wikipedia, a third of the content I read on Wikipedia about this job was about a privacy security problem we had shipped to market where we were collecting some data and we got the terms and conditions correct in one release of the app, but not the right release, or on iOS, but not on Android. We made a mistake and it got it into market. And all these years later, are people talking on Wikipedia about how much money we made, how many daily active users we had? Yes, a little, but very prominent was the security problem we had. This could happen to you, happens to a lot of companies. We all want it to not happen to us ever again if it's ever happened before. So I'm here to talk about how to continuously care for these topics and make this less likely to happen to you in the future and to me in the future. I don't want that to happen again. All right, so let's get into slides. I did mention that the name of the title is Continuous Care, Security Attention, i.e. paying attention to security in software development. And this is me on the left, on my left anyway, and a bunch of you from some other year. You're probably sitting in living rooms and not all beside each other that close this year. I had a friend on the weekend who is a marketing person who runs webinars tell me to memorize everything. Don't read my speaker notes or I was going to look crazy, and I just want to warn you that I'm not heeding her advice. I have 2 laptops here, one that's sharing to your view of full screen presenter mode and another one with my thoughts and notes on it, and my eyes are going to be a little up and down, and I am going to look just as crazy as she told me I was going to look. Maybe that gives me some credential as an engineer, rather because I decided not to care about that. I would rather get my points across than just be staring right at you the whole time. So next slide, click. Bear with me for clicking. The shift left buzzword, as I said, you can tell by my gray hair, I've been doing this 37 years. Buzzwords come and go, trends come and go. Shift left is definitely au courant right now. Just a couple of things. I believe somebody else is doing a talk that I'm looking forward to for about shifting security left. Here I want to keep it pretty simple. There are some cultures, and we were probably in this culture when we had the bad security problem historically before Lookout. Other people were looking at security, and they were looking at the security of the work you had done late in the development cycle. So you'd design some features, you'd spend a bunch of time implementing them, you'd get them ready to go to market. If you were lucky, you found out that you'd introduced the security problem before it went to market, and you're just only lucky compared to what happens if it gets all the way out into market and only then you find it. But it is inarguably expensive to fix it that late in the cycle. You're up against deadlines, you're probably already behind, and now you've got a hard decision about slipping your date further in order to fix what you did wrong. Not a good situation to be in, and it's very frustrating when you're trying, like I do, to have some security leadership on a team that maybe has not had the same bad experience about why you need to pay attention to this stuff. When you deliver the news that you need to spend some time thinking about this, teammates, and you deliver it when you're already done your feature development and you're trying to ship to market and you're stressed out and behind, really hard to get that message through as effectively as if you could get it shifted left a little bit earlier in the development. Some other factors that really come into play, though, have a lot to do with how, at least in many of the development cultures I've been in, about how we plan. And security is often thought of as as I said, late, as a validation phase, not a delivered feature. So you've got people trying to load up the development teams with, we want feature A and feature B. We'd like it to get to market by this date in the middle of the quarter. And just make sure you don't make security mistakes along the way. But as you can see from my handwritten graphic here, that's a formula for some trouble, because you then get into meetings where you're tracking features and dates and you're not talking about security, and you talk about it at the end and it's going to get just tipped off the fulcrum and dumped in the trash barrel if you're not really vigilant about it. Really easy to get unvigilant about it, especially until you've had a bad experience or really been well trained on the importance of paying attention to this. The security risks seem abstract. What's the chance that I'm going to lose my phone, and that somebody with the skills to know how to get through the screen lock is going to be the one to pick up my phone, and that they're going to be able to go here and find my Bank of America password. You have to think like that, but it's really easy to convince yourself when you're under pressure to not think about what if. So it seems abstract and statistically unlikely to really burn you. Seems like security might be somebody else's job, and as a result, you can see security get dumped too often on development teams into the trash barrel at the end. So how do you handle that? This is again not going to be a deeply technical talk about code. It's about shifting how we think and how we do development. So the first step is to just shift your thinking out of, this is not a external security team validating your work at the end. You've got to pull the focus into the implementation phase of your development team. That's easy enough. But the next thing we want to do is to make it continuous. And to go back to the title, continuous care. We want to be able to get feedback quickly. We want feedback all throughout. The last day of implementation is one day before validation, and there's not overlapping with validation. So you've got to start early and often. So that's the first thing I recommend you do, is to try to think about being sure that you're thinking about your security minimally during the implementation and throughout and continuously throughout the implementation period. And that's where I want to, I don't want to say pivot, but I will switch to a tool I'm going to walk you through. It's just one of a few that would work in this area, but the one I have the most experience with is Checkmarks, and it is a security static analysis tool. And what this tool allows us to do, and would allow other development teams to do if they're not already using a tool like this, is to essentially load up, provide access to your repository of all of your lines of source code to this tool, and it does a lot of the work for you across all of your source code, looking for and guiding your attention across it so that you can reduce and eliminate the security risk within that body of code. It's a tool designed or intended to be used by developers who are writing the code. So right there, we've already broken down one of the problems. So it's a great start to get started with this tool. Excuse my eyes going up and down. Getting a team that is not used to using a tool like this, where you're trying to evolve and pull the attention into the implementation phase, there are three barriers that I've seen and heard get in the way of actually getting this done. The first one is that it is daunting. Like, you have been writing code for 3 years, you've got a huge body of code in terms of lines of code, and now you're trying to run this tool on it for the first time. You didn't start 3 years ago. Of course you're going to be in a hole, and you're going to have to climb out of it with your attention. I'll give some tricks about how to get through that objection in a moment. We already talked about it's perceived as optional. You go into your project tracking meetings, you talk to your manager, you talk to product management, and features dates, nobody says, and by the way, are you confident it is secure? That is not a question you get asked too often. And the third one you hear very often from the developers, which is the tool is full of false positives. It's reporting on things that really aren't a security risk. And I'll talk about how to get through that as well. One other thing I'm going to have to do, and forgive me, is move my single power cord between my two laptops so that neither one of them runs out. So removing the daunting barrier, the first thing we did and the first thing I would recommend you do to get started is to just focus on your highs. The tool does a really great job of not only characterizing things it wants you to think about between high, medium, and low risk, but also within the highs, they're also prioritized. And they can give you which package to pay attention to. It gives you a lot of help so that you can just get started and focus at the top of your risk pyramid and move down. You're allowed to exclude directories and code that aren't, maybe they're all of your test cases you don't want to think about, things that are internal, never shipped to the market. So you can exclude a lot of code, which also allows you to, again, focus your attention. But the biggest thing in my experience is to just get started, have realistic expectations, and then sustain your attention over time. You will get out of the hole and come to see the benefit. The other thing I would mention from direct experience is that when you first get started with the tool, you feel a little slow. It highlights something, you have to read about it. You might have to talk to a colleague or two before you can address it. But it gets you get more efficient with it over time. You only have to deal with one type of problem of a particular category, and you're going to get faster at it the next time through. For the optional barrier, different teams organize their work streams and their workflows differently. So it's hard to be super specific, but educating the people who are pulling on the development team is a great first start. The managers who are managing the developers, if they know about the tool, they know how the tool can help make sure, like having low bug code, you have low security risk code. Great to have the manager of the team on board. Additionally, some teams have a concept of a product owner who is trying to help define priorities between features, when it's worth slipping a date to get another feature in. If that product owner has been educated about the importance of the tool, the importance of being sure you have no security problems in the product when it goes out the door, maybe a cautionary tale like the one I told at the beginning, make sure they understand how bad it can be for reputation. Getting them aligned is great. And then the final really specific one is whatever you're using for project tracking to try to get the focus on use of the tool and reduce security risk as measurable milestones. No highs of any sort by this date. All mediums either remediated or commented by this date. It's a great way to keep yourself focused and to have some rewards along the way when you get there, but it also puts it just onto your conversation with features and dates. You're now also talking about how are we doing on the use of the security tool to make sure that we have low risk there. So that helps a lot as well too. Going backwards, the false positive. This is the one I struggled with the most in eliminating on recent teams I've been at. And just out of the gate, I think what you need to do is to flip the perception about it's not false positive. If somebody's product owner or their manager told them that they needed to be confident there were no security problems in a million-line body of code and asked them to inspect every line of code, they would surely fail and they would surely be very frustrated that they had been asked to do that. What the tool does, if you flip your perception about what it's asking you to do, is sure, there are times when it is going to say, this looks suspicious and it is worthy of your attention. And just one anecdotal thing it does at times, my perception about what it's doing is, if you name a variable password and you store it on your file system, it will ask you to think through whether you're storing an unencrypted password in the clear on your file system. I look at that as a great help. If I named a variable password has been entered and it was a Boolean and it makes me think for 10 seconds about whether I'm storing a password in the clear, I say thank you. And if you flip the perception with enough people on the team, they will also come to say thank you. Instead of having to look at a million lines of code, the tool is kind of guiding your attention in a very well-informed and very smart way to the places where you need to be thoughtful. It's not a false positive. You just have to get rid of that term. It may not have been a security risk, but it was a spot in the code worthy of your human attention. Well, that's how to remove those barriers, or at least in my experience, a great way to remove some of those barriers. Different teams will be different, but I've seen those a lot. I would recommend focus there. So here's a little bit of a guide through the surface of the tool. I don't want to go too deep, but kind of show what it's capable of. What you're looking at here is a dashboard of dashboards for Lookout. We have 98 projects, and a project is roughly, you have a lot of control over how you set that up, but we tend to set them up if we have a nameable repository, a source code for a component who's worthy of a repository, then it is worthy of its own project in Checkmarks. So that's where we start, and then I'm an Android developer at present, so I wanted to just show one dashboard. This is, like all dashboards, supposed to give you a high-level summary view of how am I doing with eliminating or reducing risk in this repository. I can tell you that when we started on this repository a couple of years ago, we didn't look this good. On the highs, we had some, and we had to address them. We had some mediums, we had to address them. We are now in the process of, as I said before, focus on your highs, then your mediums. We are down to focusing on the lows, and we've done a great job. 423 is actually not that many compared to where we started. So we've just made continuous attention, continuous progress on these, and from my experience, this looks pretty good. It's a lot of yellow. We have some things to think about, but no big red flares for this one repository. The next thing it'll allow you to do is we have it set up to run an automated report weekly, but you have a lot of control in the tool about how often you can send a report to people who could be expected to care about it and read it hourly, daily, weekly is completely in your control. This is just one of about 1,100 pages of information in that report. It gets very detailed, but it starts out with some dashboardy things. And this is the chart I look at most frequently, where I'm looking for, are there any urgents? How are we doing on the to verify? Those are the ones that need to be thought about with human attention. Gives me a really quick summary of how we're doing in the repository. And it's all kind of lights out. It comes in my inbox every Monday. I could get it daily. I can run it ad hoc. It's pretty useful. I know not everyone here is a developer, but for those who are motivating or managing developers as well, it does a really great job of helping you understand what it saw. And it's a little hard to see on the screen, and I acknowledge that. But in preview, where you see the yellow highlighter over the word 2 minutes and the kind of blue stacked timeline on the right-hand side, what it is telling you is that variable on the left, 2 minutes, is being stored in the clear on the device. Do you really want to do that? And something about its name or the line of code made it a little curious that that might be a security problem. And what you can do very easily is, if you go in and look at this code, you can click through each one of those blue boxes and say, oh, I see what's happening here. I named a variable, I passed it over here, and this guy wrote it, and I didn't know he was going to write it. Didn't even think about that. I better encrypt it along the way. Or you might go through that thought process, click, 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 and say, this is no problem. That's a benign thing. It's fine that that other guy is writing it. So it helps you with that. And then on the next screen, this is where, there we go. It gives you a lot of help, and this is where I was saying early in your use of the tool, you're going to feel maybe a little slow, but think about it as education. First time you get something flagged as non-encrypted data storage, and be like, why did it think that it cared about that? It gives you a very good write-up of why it flagged it, what can cause it in your code, and some recommendations about how to address it if you find it in your code. First time, you're going to read these words all pretty thoughtfully. You might resist them a little, but then you're going to go, oh, I see the security problem here. And next time through, I'm going to say, yeah, I have to encrypt that. I understand what you're saying. All educated, much better now. Great, and so we're getting close to the end here. So if you can do what I just kind of walked through, is like introduce use of the tool, get some of your stakeholders, product managers, people managers to care, get some measurable milestones, and just get started. I only shifted into implementation just as a way of getting started, but a very natural consequence of having developers think about this while they're writing their code throughout the implementation phases. When they design their next bit of code, they'll have a lot of lessons learned about careful with your storage, careful with what you're sending over the wire. So you are implicitly shifting into design as well too, in a very amortized over time. Learn a little bit every week when I'm doing my implementation. It's not like you sent everybody to security school. You just kind of, everybody dealt with some of the stuff in their code, and they got a little smarter about what to do, and implicitly are going to do a more secure design next time out. And that gets me to my thank you page. All right, well, if there are no questions, that's fine. I think we'll find a way to share people's. I didn't do what Christy did, put my contact information on my final slide, but I'm sure we'll be chatting in the Slack channel, and I can get in touch with anybody who has questions later. So let me know if you do. Find me over there. Bye.